You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, I am thrilled to announce that I'll be hosting our third annual Summer Summit. What is the Summer Summit? Summer Summit is a virtual conference for school counselors on June 20th and 21st. We have a variety of educators who are presenting, ranging from social workers and therapists to neurodiversity and inclusion experts. And of course, you'll be hearing from your fellow school counselors. It's going to be so much fun. There's going to be live Q&A sessions with the presenters, giveaways, and a happy hour. We have over 15 amazing presenters, and guys, it's just a blast. I look forward to this every year. Like I said, it's our third one. It just keeps getting bigger and better, and I'm so excited. So if you're thinking, sign me up, sounds amazing, how do I attend? Well, the Summer Summit is exclusive for Impact members, but the good news is that you can join us. For $29, you can get your conference ticket plus your first month of Impact. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/summit. If you're already an Impact member, you don't have to do a thing. I'll be sending you an email with all the details on how to access the conference. Okay, guys, I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome. See you there. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. Today, I interview executive functioning expert Sarah Lovell. Sarah is amazing to talk to. I had such a fun conversation with her. I always send my guests questions in advance, and we went totally off script, and I just picked her brain about all things executive functioning. Sarah's really unique in the fact that she specializes with adults in executive functioning. So we usually are working with students, and while many of her strategies are applicable to relate to the students we work with, I also want you to listen to this episode for strategies on how to help you as the adult, because as school counselors, we have our plates that are so full, and we ourselves can benefit from learning some executive functioning strategies that maybe we can then model and teach to our students as well. So this was an awesome episode with Sarah. She really knows her stuff. She's also one of our Summer Summit presenters, and stick around to the end of this episode where she shares exactly what she'll be talking about during her presentation, but it is packed full of goodness. She's providing some really applicable strategies that she sees her clients struggle with, and that will help school counselors specifically. She's also made her presentation really thoughtful to reflect school counselors. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. I cannot wait to see her presentation at Summer Summit next week. So next week on the 20th, that is when our Summer Summit begins. Remember, this is my online virtual conference exclusive for Impact members. So if you're an Impact member, you get to go for absolutely free. It's included in your membership, and it's all inside Impact waiting for you. But if you're not an Impact member and you're like, hey, I want to go to the Summer Summit, I want to hear Sarah's session, well, you can totally join us. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/summit to snag your ticket, which includes your first month of Impact. So go ahead and sign up. You'll get Impact as well as your Summer Summit ticket. And then you can stick around and hopefully stay with us in Impact for a while and see all that it has to offer as well. So I really hope you'll join us. Sarah is just one of 18 amazing presenters at the summit. It's going to be so great. I'm super pumped. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm good, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to talk to you today. We had a little rescheduling thing, so I'm just so excited that I was here. It's honestly, having a podcast, I love the actual interviews and recording of the episodes, but all of the back end stuff is a little overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, lots of admin and moving pieces, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. But so happy that we're here. And you are one of our Summer Summit presenters, which is right around the corner. And we are so excited I can't wait to see your presentation.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me onto that. That was a lovely surprise to be part of that. So thank you.
Yeah. So tell us, so my podcast is mainly for school counselors, but you are not a school counselor, which is why I'm so excited to chat with you today, because we're always looking to learn from other experts in related fields. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure. So I'm Sarah Lovell, and my background is in social work. So I have a master's in social work. I worked in the nonprofit world for a while, but my full-time job now is that I'm an executive function and ADHD coach. So I have a really cool job that most people have never heard of or don't even know exists. I kind of stumbled across this world about 10 years ago, doing executive function coaching as a very part-time job while I was figuring out what I wanted to do professionally. So I've been coaching for 10 years.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
grown. Yeah. So it's grown over that time. I started with an agency, kept coaching through grad school, kept coaching with my full-time social work job, and then decided to make a pivot. And I left social work. And so now I run Executive Functioning First, which is my coaching practice. And I primarily coach professionals, adults, and college students. So most of my clients are intelligent, bright, hardworking people, but they have challenges with time management, getting started, procrastination, sometimes perfectionism gets mixed into there. And so I basically help people create systems and tools to make their lives go a little bit smoother. So that's planning, organizing, prioritizing, figuring out how to take action, juggling busy schedules with work, life, kids, self-care, hobbies, all of those things.
Yeah.
So that's, I love what I get to do. I coach one-on-one, and then I also have a membership, the Stuck to Started Society. So it's a long, windy journey to where I am now, but basically I love helping people learn about themselves, notice their self-talk and how it impacts their ability to take action, and then build a set of toolbox to fit into their lives.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Yes, and there is such a need. It's awesome. You've been doing it for 10 years, because I'm trying to think of the first time I heard the word executive function. I feel like it was like in my undergrad class or something. So like, I don't even know, 2011 or something in psychology. And then I was thinking like executive. I was thinking of like the CEO, like an executive. I was like, what is this word I'm hearing?
People
And yeah.
don't know what it is, and so people do initially think, oh, I only coach executives. No, like
Really? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
no. So,
Yeah.
and I do think it's become more of a buzzword. Like we're hearing it more in education. Like I get two questions: do you work with kids or do you work with CEOs? And I really don't work with either.
Either, right. That's so
but
funny.
yeah, but no, I think like executive functioning, it is like the CEO of our brain is another way to think of it.
Right.
And everyone needs and uses executive function skills. So I think that's another like misconception, is that somebody needs to have an ADHD diagnosis or needs to have a learning difference or disability to benefit from executive function coaching. And that's not true. Like anybody can have challenges with planning, organizing, prioritizing, time management, like all of those executive function pieces. So I love that I get to work with such a wide variety of clients and people in different phases in their life. And yeah, and I do not work with kids, and I've worked with the rare CEO.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. No, actually, one of my really good friends, well, she's been seeing an executive functioning coach. She had like a later in life ADHD diagnosis and
Yep.
has found it very helpful. She runs a business as well. And there's so, like I was just saying, the back end organizational piece of like, okay, I'm having a podcast. I got to like get the call coordinated, send the questions, the follow up stuff. Like there's so many things like that. And I feel like I actually love a good spreadsheet and am like a fairly organized person, but I, also struggle in other areas of executive functioning. And then I know others who struggle with the organization piece. So yes, okay. I can't wait to pick your brain. So yes, our audience, school counselors, many of them are maybe doing an executive functioning group with their students. I know that's something that I've done in the past. Before it was such a hot topic, maybe it was labeled as like a study skills thing or an academic skills, but now we're finding out there's more to that than just study skills. So I kind of want to do a twofold thing here. I want to ask how you can help counselors help their students, because I know you don't work with students, but then also some adult tools that we may not have in our toolbox you could help us with.
Yeah. So I think the biggest like piece of executive functioning that we don't talk about enough, which directly relates to your counselors and ties in my mental health background as a social worker, is the self-talk piece that comes with executive functioning. So many of my clients are experiencing these struggles, right? With procrastination, time blindness, getting stuck, which I know, looks different in students, but basically that comes with oftentimes a lot of negative self-talk, right? That shame, blame, guilt. I'm always late. I never get this right. Everyone else has this figured out but me. So I think like that the foundation of executive functioning is our self-talk. And so it really comes down to noticing that, being able to reframe it, and for students, being able to help them understand that it's not their fault, that if they keep trying to use the same tool over and over again, it's not them, that they just don't have the right tool yet. And so when you can address that self-talk piece first and acknowledge like, that's the starting point, that there needs to be some of that understanding, some self-acceptance, more of that understanding, then it becomes easier to try a new tool, or to be open to learning some of those study strategies, those time management strategies, to be open to trying a new skill or a new tool, because then it's no longer your fault.
Right.
So I think that like self-talk piece is huge for everybody I work, but I'm also guessing for like younger students as well, because that's kind of ingrained, like that comparison piece of everybody else is getting it. Everybody else is passing in their homework on time, but I'm not. Like, why can't I figure this out?
Like, what's wrong with me?
What's
Right.
wrong with me? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like that self-talk piece, that's most of my clients don't realize that that's going to be part of coaching, but you really can't change the tool in the toolbox until you change how you talk to yourself. And even for some people, it's noticing that that's there in the first place.
Right. No, I love that. I think many counselors are doing this with like CBT strategies, or even talking about growth mindset or changing negative thoughts to positive thoughts. We're doing these things all the time, but I hadn't really thought about the connection to executive functioning. But that's such a good point. It's kind of like the foundation of the other skills.
Yeah. And then I think once you're able to kind of do all of that self-talk piece, then it becomes like a lighter lift to try a new tool. Because then it's almost like reframing it as like, it's an experiment. You get to try something new. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. You're going to try something else. You're not broken. The tool that you're using just isn't the right fit for you. So you get to try on different tools.
Right.
So I think that's like the biggest like key is addressing that self-talk piece before looking at different tools.
Right. And then after you address that, would you try to find out with your clients like what they are currently doing and figuring out how to help them there? Or
Yeah. Yeah. So my coaching strategy is super collaborative. And basically, I view my clients as the expert in themselves. So we are all our own expert in us. And so same for students, like they know what, maybe with a little bit more guidance, but like what's working for you, what's not working for you, what have you tried that like you keep trying over and over again. Let's pause on that and we're going to tweak it. And then it's like a very collaborative process of like brainstorming what the person is going to be open to trying. And because oftentimes we have an idea of what could work or might work, but we need that like kind of like thought tank of bringing together ideas and thinking through things collaboratively. So when I coach, it is very individualized. Like I have lots of tools in my toolbox, but it's every person needs to come up with what's going to work with them with some like molding and guiding and support.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. So I know you do like a very individualized approach with your clients because it kind of varies, but are there any general strategies for the counselors that you can share with us for adults who are professionals,
Sure.
like,
yeah.
we would love to hear. I know I'm
Yeah.
eager to hear.
So I think basically the biggest theme that I talk about with everybody is that you deserve an external system. And what I mean by that is you are keeping track of so much in your head all the time, more than you realize. Like, oh, I need to remember to do this even like a couple minutes from now, right? Like when I leave the office, I need to remember to go talk to so-and-so, or I need to remember to bring this with me, right? we're keeping track of so many moving pieces. And we're always making lots of decisions along the way. So everything is being held in our head. And so you deserve to be able to get it out of your head in a way that works for you, whether that's, and I know this sounds so simple, but like paper and pen, electronic, like having some sort of a system where you're consistently getting things out of your head in an organized and more efficient way. And that is something that I get into. I know I'm jumping ahead, but that's one of the things I show in the summit is like a super simple strategy to just rewrite your to-do list. Because to-do lists are great, but they don't actually help us take action or get unstuck. They're just a way to get things out of our head and onto paper or onto an app or an electronic system so that we can have that weight off of our shoulders of like not trying to constantly remember something. So then we're like overthinking about it, or it's like gone to the wind. So having a organized external system that you can rely on and allowing yourself to change that. So I think the biggest thing that a lot of my clients struggle with is consistency. And I have like a controversial opinion that like you don't need to be consistent with the same tool. So like you can own 5 planners and you can have your Google Note and you can have your Asana or your Notion or whatever else you're using. You don't have to be consistent with like using the same thing the same way every time, but you have to be able to bring yourself back if a strategy is like losing its shine or you're becoming bored of it, like to be able to pivot to something else. So being able to say like, okay, I was using a paper planner that I was in love with, but now I'm just not going back to it, or I'm not checking it. I'm not being as consistent with it, kind of in air quotes. And then being able to pivot to like, okay, I'm going to, instead of doing that, I'm going to move to the whiteboard in my office, or I'm going to move to this electronic system. So giving yourself that permission of you don't have to keep doing things the same way all the time because your brain wants and needs novelty. But basically having the like scaffolding of this is how I organize my thoughts. So, and I give an example of how to basically organize a to-do list or a brain dump by energy level or category or location. So it's not just like, here's everything I need to do today in one giant list, but like, here are the things that I need to do that are light, easy lifts. Or here are the things that I need to do that involve other people. So I know I'm going to need to have a social battery for that.
Or I love the energy level. I hadn't thought of it before.
I'm a huge energy person. So in the summit, I do get into talking about like how to notice your energy. It's not just high or low energy. It's like different types of energy. So like admin, creative, clinical, right? Like when you're working with students. It's also like problem solving energy. Like, do I have the headspace to like figure out how to approach a problem or learn something new? So when you're able to externalize your thoughts in that way with different energies, categories, then it kind of takes out some of that planning so that you can look at your external system and start more easily. Because that starting is the hardest part for most people, getting started.
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay. This is so great. I have so many thoughts. First, I feel like, I don't know if you're a mother, but you are a woman. I feel like it disproportionately affects women, especially mothers, with like this mental load. It's like so many things. Like this morning, I'm like getting ready for our call, but then I was like, oh, we're having my son's birthday. I need to do the invitation. And then I said I would bring this meal to school and like so many things. And I have so many lists, but which leads me to the other thought. I do have different lists in different places. So that's good to hear that, you know, like I have a project management tool, but then I have more of a to-do list with reminders, but I need a better system. Like I can't wait for your session because my reminder app, it's just like constantly going off. But then if I'm not taking action, then I don't even like notice the reminders. My husband's like, why do you even have that app? You don't even do anything when you get a notification. And I'm like, you're right. And then on a similar note, I love what you're saying about even just pen and paper is powerful because I use Slack to work with like one of my team members, and she doesn't work on like nights or weekends. And we have that boundary, like obviously want to respect her time. But I had something like I did something on the night or weekend and I needed just to tell it to her. And then I just like dumped it there. And then I felt bad because she responded and I was like, oh no, like just to be clear, I don't expect you to reply outside of your work hours. This is just literally my way of dumping it. So then I'm like, I did my part. Okay, now she reads it and she can do her part. But I was like, maybe I need to like schedule those because that's not really fair to like, ping her on her off time. But it felt so much better because I was like, I can't feel like I did it until I fully finish it by relaying it to you.
And so our brains want to close the loop, basically. Yes. And so like, that's where sometimes writing it down, it's not going to close the loop fully because there's still more to do or action steps that need to happen, or you haven't even started the thing yet.
Yeah.
But it closes that part of your brain that's like, I need to remember this. And so it gives you that permission of, okay, I've sent the Slack message. I don't need to remember that this message needs to go, or like it's off of my plate, it's onto her plate. So the same thing is true with like a really well organized brain dump, that it's like you're clearing your head, you're closing that loop, and then you have something external to go to. Because you're so right, like the disproportional, I'm not a mom, but that women do carry a disproportional load of things to remember and keep track of, at home, with families, at work, for themselves. And so like I always tell my clients, like, you deserve to get it out of your head. And you deserve to get it out of your head in a way that's going to work for you. And it's okay for that to change. And then your comment on the pings going, and like at this point it's so repetitive that they don't like carry the weight of a reminder. Right. So that's where it's like, okay, if it's serving some purpose, like that it's there and it's there, then it's worth keeping. But if it's not getting you to take action, then that's where I would work with clients and say, okay, how can we take what you're doing that's working and tweak it just a little so that it's a little bit shiny and new for your brain. Because everybody's brain wants a little bit of shiny and new. Even more so for people who have an ADHD diagnosis or learning differences or things that may impact their executive functioning more. But basically it's like when you can tweak it just a little, where it's like, okay, I'm getting the ping in a different way, or when the ping goes off, I'm putting a reminder somewhere else for myself that like creates a little bit of novelty, then your brain sees it more. It's almost like, I love sticky notes, but if I have a sticky note up on my bathroom mirror forever, eventually you don't see it. You like look you look right past it. So it's like, how can you just tweak it a little bit, so that you're still doing what's working, but you're creating a little bit of sparkle and glitter for yourself.
Right. No, I love that. And in terms of procrastination, do you find, kind of like devil's advocate here, that some people get like too into the list making, but then they're not taking action on the list items?
So that's why, so I call that, it's procrastiplanning. It's still valid, but I think a lot of people get stuck in the planning process, and that's, I think there's a difference between procrastination and being stuck too. So like, and I could talk about that forever, but I'll give my short spiel on it. So procrastination in my mind is when you have something that you don't want to do, and so you keep kicking the can. Maybe you're not as connected to it. Maybe it's something that you're being told you need to do, maybe boring, whatever that is. You don't want to do it. You're not connected to it. So you just keep pushing it out. Being stuck is different. Being stuck is you really want to do the thing. It's meaningful to you. There's a connection there, but you are having a hard time getting started. And I think it's like so important to pull those things apart, because there can be a lot of shame and like guilt. And again, that negative self-talk of, I can't get myself to start this thing, even though it's important to me, or even though I want to do it. And so even renaming that as, I'm stuck right now versus I'm procrastinating. And we all procrastinate and we all get stuck, but I think it's just important to pull that apart for people who struggle with it so chronically. Right. But so and that's back to your question of the to-do list and getting stuck with planning. I think for a lot of people, my clients in particular, will try to do everything all at once. So it'll be like, I'm going to make the list and then I'm going to take action on it. But I think it's important to separate out planning from action, because if you're doing a big brain dump or you're spending a lot of time figuring out what your plan is going to be, you're using a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And so then giving yourself the permission to like take a break, pause, switch gears, and then have a clear starting point of, when I come back from my break, I'm going to pick the smallest, most realistic, actionable step. So it's not going to be, I'm going to catch up on my emails. It's going to be, I'm going to open my inbox and look at my emails, mm-hmm. right? So even like breaking it down, and I do get into this briefly in the summit of like, your to-do list might start as a brain dump of goals, but it's really important to turn it into clear action items, action steps, mm-hmm. so that you don't have to make the decision, because decision fatigue is really real,
right?
Of how do you start? So like, I think in the summit, I give an example of like, if you need to finish, and I made up a lot of things from what I know of school counselors' jobs, but like, if you need to write a report or something, like let's say you're finishing up your part of an IEP, instead of saying finish IEP, it might say contact teacher to ask about XYZ, write introduction, write recommendations. Like those are 3 separate things. And I know counselors are very busy and often get pulled away from their desk. So right. Instead of saying finish report, it might be, okay, these are 3 separate things that I can divide out through the day. Or I know exactly where I'm leaving off and exactly where I'm picking up when I get back from, this crisis intervention that I got called out on.
Right. I love that. And then it feels more accomplished, right? Then you're like, I didn't do it at all. You did part of it.
Exactly. And then that goes back to your brain wanting to close the loop. Mm-hmm. If you're only waiting to give yourself credit when the full report is submitted, you've waited too long. Because then it doesn't feel good. So it's like, okay, well, I've read through the report. That's step 1. I've brain dumped out what my recommendations are going to be. That's step 2. So like you can check those boxes for yourself mentally and literally. If you're, not everybody gets a dopamine hit from checking out off a box, but I do. And so the more boxes I can check, the better I feel.
Yeah.
So even that, like mentally for ourselves, we're like, wow, okay, I didn't finish the report today because all this other stuff popped up, but look at I checked 3 out of 5 boxes. Right. And so then I know these are the remaining 2 that I have when I come back tomorrow.
Right. That's so good to hear about the planning being separate from the action, because I feel like I will have entire work days that are just project planning, where I'm just like making lists and like breaking things down into different steps. And then I'll have a day like yesterday where all I did was take the action, because I already knew when I sat at my desk, like, this is what I have to do today, this one thing. And then I just did it and it felt great. But it's definitely a different mindset than the planning part.
It is. And then that ties into the self-talk piece of like, if you put the expectation on yourself of, I'm going to create a plan and take action all at once, but all you do is create the plan, then it doesn't feel as good. So it's like, it's about that expectation setting, because most of my clients are type A, hardworking perfectionists sometimes. And so it's like, how do you notice what your expectation is that you're holding yourself to, and kind of do a reality check on what's my energy, what's realistic, how much time do I have? And so then giving yourself that permission of, today doesn't make sense to try to take action on this plan. Today's just a planning day. Or this morning I'm going to plan, and then I have a meeting, and then I'm going to take action on, this step that feels good to take action on. But planning is step 1. And then action is step 2.
I love this. Well, I could talk to you all day, but I do want to be mindful of your time. Give us a little teaser. You kind of have sprinkled it out throughout our conversation, but just a brief little teaser of what your session will be about at Summer Summit.
Yeah. So the Summer Summit session, I talk about time management tools to help you get things done at work so that you save energy for when you get home. So you still, because I know counselors are putting a lot of themselves into their work. They're getting pulled in lots of directions. So I go through some really simple but effective tools to reorganize their external to-do lists, kind of what we talked about today with working with your energy. I also give a super brief overview of what I like to call intuitive scheduling, which is how do you balance your busy calendar with your appointments, your meetings, with when you have free blocks of time, how do you make a plan so that when you have a half hour, you can use it effectively and efficiently and get things done in that half hour in between your meetings. So definitely working with your energy. And then I give a set of questions to help you prioritize, because I know that's something that counselors are doing all day, every day. You're triaging and figuring out where do I need to put my time and attention right now? And I think a misconception about prioritizing is that we need to start with the most time sensitive thing. That's not always true. So I gave a list of my favorite reflection questions to help you decide what would make the most impact for you during your day. So there's some of those questions in there as well.
Oh, I love it. That sounds amazing. My one little final question, you can answer briefly, but do you believe people should do the hardest thing first? Like there's that saying, like eat the frog or whatever.
Yeah, eat the frog or eat the cake. It depends on the person. So some people love starting with the hardest thing because they're like, oh, it's off my plate. I feel so good. Most of my clients do not start with the hardest thing because the amount of like build up that you need to get there. So a lot of my clients start with what I call like the light, easy lift. It's basically like what's going to get you going, get you unstuck.
Like momentum. Okay.
Momentum building, check off a few things, and then identify if you're somebody that has a hard time eating the frog, which is such a bizarre statement, but identifying the smallest, most realistic step to start. So like really breaking that down into super small steps so that you're not doing the whole thing at once. You're like, I give the example of like, instead of saying I'm going to go to the gym and run, that's not the goal. The goal is to put on the sneakers. So you're just putting on the sneakers. So it depends on the person. That's my, that's my answer on that. Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been awesome. Where can the listeners find you if they want to connect further and check out everything you offer?
Yeah. So my business is called Executive Functioning First. So my website is executivefunctioningfirst.com. I'm also super active on Instagram. The handle is Executive Functioning First.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Rachel.
I hope you loved that episode with Sarah. Like I said, it was really fun for me. I just really liked picking her brain because I too am passionate about this topic. I'm kind of like, I want to be an executive functioning expert. This sounds fun and kind of in my wheelhouse. But anyways, don't miss her session. Like she just said, she's going to be deep diving into all of these executive functioning topics for you, for the school counselor, on how to maximize your time so you can have more energy when you get home, which who doesn't want more energy when they get home, right? Sometimes we feel so drained, we're spending it all on our students that we barely have any left for our loved ones and ourselves. So this session is going to be amazing. I cannot wait. Summer Summit is next week, y'all. So don't forget to get your ticket. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/summit. That gets you your Summer Summit conference ticket as well as your first month of impact. Because remember, this conference is exclusive for our Impact members. In addition to the amazing sessions, there's going to be giveaways. We also have live Q&A sessions. So Sarah and the other presenters are going to jump on different live calls. We're having them during lunchtime and happy hour. So you can bring your lunch, bring a cocktail, a mocktail, whatever. Join us by the pool, super casual and fun, and we can pick their brains about the sessions we just watched. There's also going to be prizes and giveaways and raffles, and it's going to be a blast. I'm very excited. So this is our third one. It gets bigger and better every year, and I hope to see you there. So again, stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/summit. Okay, talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.